Hello, hello, hello. Just saying hello to everyone. It is about 3 minutes after 5 Eastern Standard Time. So we are live for the 123rd birthday anniversary of Bernando Lapallo. Hey, hi Glows Club, welcome. My name is Erika, and I'm Bernando's oldest grandchild. So I just want to welcome everyone who's joining, and then just give everyone like a minute to actually join also, because when people have their notifications turned on, it can take a minute. So while we're waiting for that to happen, I'm just going to turn on a fan in here. It's very, very humid here, and we're actually experiencing a little bit of a rainstorm at the same time. So it's just a tad warm. So since I'm going to be with you for about an hour, I should probably turn that fan on now, but I'll be right back. Okay. There we go, I'm back. All right. So I guess I'll just get started and hope that more people would join as we go along here. So I always like to come on every year since Bernando crossed over in 2015 and just, keep his memory alive by kind of having these fireside chats. Hopefully I'll be able to see any comments that you make below, but sometimes for some reason that isn't always the case. Facebook can be quirky. But that being said, I will certainly go back and respond to comments afterwards if I don't happen to see your comments right now while we're doing this. It's August 17th, 2024. And if Bernando had lived, he would have made it to 123 years. Of course, his sort of outside ambition is that he used to think, well, maybe I could make it to 120. But he did make it at least to 114, having been born August 17th, 1901 in Victoria, Brazil. But I said that today I was going to talk about Bernando's keys to longevity and trying to make it relatable to you. How can it apply to you? Because if you're a subscriber or a follower of this page, most likely you're interested in improving the quality of your life and adding more life to your years and not just years to your life. So that's my goal today. He was amazing in that he really lived a full life. He was really, really a great example of living a full life. And the older that I get, I'm 61 years old now. I was born April 8th, 1963. The more his message and the more his books take on an even more profound, and refreshing meaning to me, because we live in a world where there's an obsession, with being young, right? There's an obsession with trying to look like, I don't know, you're 25 or 30 when you may be 50, 60, or 70. But he was a person that really embodied vitality and youthfulness, because certainly he had a youthful energy about him. So, he used to say you're as old as you feel. But if you feel good, right, because you take care of your body as a temple, in the way in which he did, then you're pretty much going to feel good every single day. So a couple of his mottos was always make health your first priority. Always make health your first priority. And this, for him, meant that you should never do anything. You shouldn't go along with the crowd or go along with your peers or indulge in different habits or, do something that is going to impact you negatively, right? your sleep, your digestion, your peace of mind, and so on and so forth. If that's going to be, the outcome of a particular choice that you make, you should choose yourself first. So I think in many ways there's a lot of talk about self-love right now, these days, which is good to hear, but I feel that Bernando really did embody that in every day of his life. So just to slow down and kind of reiterate the message I'm trying to get across here is that because he led this lifestyle, right? I kind of think of him as being the original lifestyle guru. And because he treated his body with the utmost care and respect every day of his life, this is why he was so full of vitality. When I consider the troubles of today's world, right? Because the world is certainly a troubled place, but the world pretty much has always been a troubled place. So I started reflecting on his own life and the different things that he went through. So for example, when he was a young man, World War I was taking place, right? Then he got to be a little bit older, and different forms of racism were codified in the form of Jim Crow, the laws of Jim Crow, segregation, and all these different things that went into play. If that weren't enough, of course, there was the Great Depression, right? That's stressful. And then on the heels of that was World War II. So I think it's important to put this in context, in his life in context, in terms of a time period, because it can be very easy to idolize someone, right? It can be very easy to romanticize someone, or maybe think that somehow they didn't make an effort to be in the place that they are in life, and that maybe things came easy. And I say that because, of course, you're experiencing, I'm experiencing, we're all experiencing pressures in our everyday life, right? From our family, from our job, and from the general state of the world. So he was experiencing these pressures too, of course. But again, because he always made his health his first priority, his own well-being, he was able to really, I guess you could say, sail through life, to use metaphor. And he was a seaman. He was a merchant seaman at one point in his career. And of course, the family responsibilities that he had. He was a family man. He had family members that depended on him, right? He had to make a living. So all these different pressures that a human being that goes through, and also a shout out to the men who I notice often make their health a last priority. Men will often make their health a last priority, and therefore buckle under the stress, ultimately, that can cut their lives short. But Bernando never did that. Bernando always made his health a first priority. He always took time. He always set time aside every day of his life to implement certain practices, which I'm going to get to. If I were to describe Bernando, my grandfather, I would say that he had a serenity about him in spite of the world's troubles and the obstacles he faced in his own personal life. So the questions that we're addressing today is, how did he remain in good health in spite of all those things? And more importantly, how can you remain in good health in spite of all the obstacles and the pressures and the demands on your time that you face every single day, year in and year out? So I'm going to let the man speak for himself, and I don't know how many of you have a copy of this book. This is Bernando's first book. It's a classic. It's called Age Less, Live More, Achieving Health and Vitality at 107 Years and Beyond. So if you have it, I would invite you to open up your copy and open it up to page 18. On page 18, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the book, there is an introduction. And in the introduction, it's beautifully written, and he gives a lot of insight onto the things that he's going to talk about in the book and the things that he considers to be the most important. He lays out his methodology. Thank you, Ahmed. I hope that I'm pronouncing your name right. It really is a great book. Okay, so he says, if you're following along, on page 18, he says, there are 3 basic aspects that I would like to share with the readers of this book. They are all equally important, and all are necessary if one wishes to live a life that will never be a burden to others and provide a quality to their lives that they may never have thought possible. It will require a paradigm shift, but it's easier than one may think. The first aspect I'll be discussing is the importance of maintaining a positive, optimistic outlook on life. There have been studies that show that people who are optimistic not only live an average of 7 years longer, but suffer fewer ailments than the normal population. That statistic alone should be enough motivation to change their outlook. I believe in and try and live my life by the golden rule. To paraphrase, I want everyone to have what I have. I also believe that every person and every situation that comes our way, both good and bad, is there for a reason and to teach us something important. There is no need to avoid or dread any negative circumstance if we look at it as an opportunity to learn. A second component that I would like to stress is the need for physical movement and exercise. We know that a body in motion stays in motion. One needs to let the muscles do what they were designed to do by walking, stretching, and other movement exercises, which also applies to the mind, just as the muscles of the body will atrophy without daily use, so too will the mind weaken without proper stimulation. I, for instance, Bernando's talking about himself, I, for instance, try and read for a few hours every day. Not only does this exercise my mind, but it adds to my knowledge on a multitude of subjects. From doing puzzles to working out math problems without a calculator to writing, there are hundreds of ways to keep one's mind fit and strong. And he gets to the third aspect that he feels is equally important. Finally, the food we eat is perhaps the most important factor affecting our overall quality and quantity of our lives. The closer we can get to eating foods the way God made them, the better we'll feel and the longer we'll live. He did not put preservatives into the earth so that the vegetables and fruits would remain on the trees without going bad. He did not place a microwave under the tree of life so that his children could eat mushy, nutrient-deprived food. He gave us raw fruits and vegetables that could serve as the backbone for a healthy diet. And by eating these foods, one's life will significantly be changed for the better. So those are three, you could say, cornerstones. Again, three things that he felt was absolutely necessary for having a life, you know, that was going to be quality, that hopefully was going to have some longevity to it. And that's something that people should be looking at their habits and trying to implement these things. Because what I find really interesting about this is that he says, if one wishes to live a life that will never be a burden to others. Now that was something about Bernando. That was something about Grandpa, is that he was a very independent man. He was very self-sufficient. He worked very hard, right? He had several different careers. He had a career, of course, as a chef. He had been trained for that. But when he was working as a chef, sometimes he would find himself in circumstances where he was working at sea, right? Other times he might be working on fancier cruise ships. Other times he might be working in a restaurant, being the head chef, you know, somewhere in Florida, which of course has always been kind of an attractive place for people to go and relax and have a resort, and he had that responsibility. Or later on in life, actually into his 90s, he was also came out of retirement and also worked as a chef again at a country club in North Carolina. How is it possible for a man in his 90s to be working as a chef in a country club? That's because he always took care of himself, right? And it was an opportunity that he had to be employed, because he was not the kind of person that was just going to stay at home and put his feet up on the couch and be sedentary. He really thrived on interaction with other people, with social contact. He was a great conversationalist. He really enjoyed other people's company. He loved telling stories, and he liked listening to other people as well. He liked learning from other people as well. And he didn't want to be a burden on anyone. So for him, his attitude or his outlook was, I'm going to take care of my body, and my body's going to take care of me. He used to say that. If you take care of your body will take care of you, right? So, of course, you know, things happen. We could, you know, find ourselves in an unfortunate accident. But the other thing about him that I have learned from him, also that I imbibed from him, is, let's say something did happen, he would address whatever it was immediately. Sometimes people can have, you know, a fear, right? A fear of, you know, going to the doctor, right? Because they don't want to find out what's wrong. You know, they don't want to be proactive in being preventative. But Bernando did go for a yearly checkup every year. I get the impression that maybe people think sometimes that he didn't do that, but he actually did do that on a regular basis. So I'm trying to think, because he really was never sick, to be honest. But I'm just trying to think of an incident here that isn't too dramatic where something happened. The thing that I'm remembering right now is people used to ask, you know, if he participated in sports, you know, when he was a young man. Of course, he was a very avid walker, right? He used to even walk on the prow of the boat when he was working at sea. He would walk an average of, you know, 1.5 to 2 miles a day. And he kept that practice up, I'd say, until he was about 112. And then he started to slow down a little bit. That may sound crazy, but, you know, an object in motion stays in motion. But when he was a younger man and he was going to a university down in Pennsylvania, he, of course, you know, kind of joined the football team, right? The football team, that was a thing to do. And I said, really, you joined the football team? Wow, like, how did that turn out? And he said, well, I didn't stay, you know, he didn't stay in that for very long, because he had an accident right? Where one of his fingers ended up being crushed by that, right? Maybe someone ran on his hand or something like that. And that was the end of football for him. He withdrew himself from that activity because he did not want to put any part of his body, at risk. And of course, because he had an interest in cooking, right, and being a chef, you absolutely need your hands if you're going to do that kind of work. So that's just something that struck me. With you, perhaps it could be something else, right? Maybe you twisted your ankle or sprained your knee or chipped your tooth. It could be anything, really. So instead of ignoring something, address it right away. Address it right away so it doesn't progress to a point where it turns into something unmanageable. So that's something that I really learned from him, right? Because that way your recovery time is more rapid, and then you can get back to being a self-sufficient, independent person who can take care of yourself. He hated to be a burden on anyone, and he used to say all the time that if and when he got to a place where he wasn't able to, walk by himself, feed himself, be in good health, if he ever felt that there was going to come a point where he was not going to be able to do that, that's when he wanted to leave. That's when he wanted to check out. He was not interested, as he put it, riding in a broken down vehicle, because he considered the body to be like a car, right? So that's my recollection on that. Again, this whole thing about being optimistic, it's very easy to be pessimistic in this world, that's for sure. You watch the news, you see what's going on in the world, or, maybe you're in a situation that you don't want to be in, right? So you need strength of mind, right? You need to have strength of mind. You need to have a positive mindset. What do we say today? We need to have boundaries, right? We need to have certain kinds of boundaries where we allow ourselves the time to rejuvenate, to refresh ourselves, not only in body and spirit, but also in mind and in outlook, so we can go through life without being weighed down by the negative attitudes that surround us, that may surround us. Nowadays, people talk about, what is it? They say letting go of toxic people. But also, we may be carrying things on the inside. We may be carrying different burdens or different beliefs that weigh us down, that we want to get rid of that. We want to feel confident in ourselves, that we are capable of attaining the goals in which we set for ourselves, that we are capable, in spite of different obstacles that we may encounter, that we are smart enough and that we are capable enough to be able to overcome those obstacles. So that's very important. And to that end, what I find interesting here is that he talks about, again, the need for physical exercise. So if anyone, perhaps maybe someone is a runner here, or they're into some kind of regular exercise, even walking, you know that by doing something like that every day, it has the effect of clearing your mind. You get on a bicycle, or you go swimming, or you go for a hike, or you go for a run, or maybe you go to a dance class, whatever it is that you like to do. You work out in the gym. But when you start to do that physical exercise, suddenly all those problems, right, that were clouding your mind and that were clouding your vision, vanish, because you are focusing on the task at hand that you are engaging your body with. Of course, the side benefit, other than clearing your mind, is that it's also getting your blood circulating, and it's delivering the nutrients. The blood delivers nutrients to all different parts of your body, including your brain. And it's a great stress reliever. And again, he's also talking about the need to exercise the mind. So these days, when I go outside and I get on public transportation, or maybe scarily enough, if you're driving a car, you see people doing this, everyone is on their cell phone all the time. People are on their cell phone all the time. They're constantly being sort of fed. They're constantly sort of absorbing things without necessarily really making an effort to use their own mind to understand things. Of course, I can talk about the side effects of being exposed to radiation and all those rays and different things that come out of a cell phone, or the different effects that it has on your mind. But that being said, just being able to pick up a book, like my grandfather's book, and feel it in your hands and turn the pages and read at your own pace and put the book down and contemplate it and to touch it, this has a great effect on us, a positive effect on us as human beings, because also what a book can do is stimulate our imagination. A book can take us to another place. It can take us on an adventure. It can take us to another country. It can take us forward in time. It can take us back in time, right? We can be studying all kinds of things. We can walk in another person's shoes, when we're reading a book, right? So reading a book, an actual book, is very, very stimulating and very good for ourselves. He also points out that he does crossword puzzles, okay? Maybe reading is not really your thing. Or maybe you have someone that reads to you. Why do we read to children at night before they go to bed? But another thing that he would do, again, is that he would do crossword puzzles, right? To figure that out, to jog his memory. This is another good thing to do. And he mentions here also that he would solve math problems without a calculator. Because if you have to solve a math problem without a calculator, if you're doing addition or subtraction or multiplication or division, you actually have to think. You actually have to think, right? Okay, 120. Let's say, 120 divided by 4, right? What is that? What is that? Now I'm going to think about it. 4, 8, 12, right? That's going to be divided. Am I getting that right? 4, 8, 12. That's going to be divided into 30. 30 minutes times 4, right? So these different types of things that actually make you rely on your own mind, that's good for you. That's very, very good for you, because you don't become lazy, right? And you also stimulate the different synapses in your brain. It's shown that people that learn new things and that are reading, the brain actually grows new nerve endings or new synapses, and it fires off in different ways, which keeps the brain young and healthy. This is actually scientifically proven. But what I find so interesting, it's not that he didn't know these things, but what I find so interesting about Bernando is that he just had so much wisdom, It's amazing. Okay. Or he said, maybe you like to write, maybe you like to journal, maybe that's something like you like to do. Or maybe you like to play chess or backgammon or checkers, or maybe you belong to a debate club. Maybe you like to do research. There's so many different ways in which you can stimulate your mind. And if you want to make a comment down below and let me know how you do that, I would love to read that afterwards and hear your feedback on that. That would be great. Again, just to recap, he says, finally, the food that we eat is perhaps the most important factor affecting our overall quality and quantity of our lives, right? And he talks about, hey, Gail, he talks about, not using a microwave, right? You don't want to use something that's going to zap the food, take the nutrients out of the food. The whole idea, eating close to nature, right? As he says, eating the way God intended, perhaps going to the farmer's market if you can, instead of going to the supermarket, right? Maybe if you're lucky enough to live in a place where you can actually grow some food outside. Or my neighbors today, they were actually, for fun, they were going to, hey Aaron, thank you so much. Thank you. Maybe you're going to go somewhere in the fall is coming up to pick apples or pick raspberries or, you know, pick corn, these different kinds of activities the way our ancestors did, right, to reconnect with that. So this is very important, right? And also taking the time to chew your food. Not gulp your food down, but actually chew your food properly. Okay, so I just wanted to expand on that a little bit. Again, I've already talked about addressing whatever health issues that you may have, not to procrastinate with that, but to address those immediately, right? Because if something is bothering you physically, that's your body tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, you need to look at this. You need to pay attention to this. Thank you. All is well with me. Thank you very much, Aaron. So, you know, your body is trying to get your attention, right? So go ahead and look into it and see what it is, right? Because there's so many, you know, times where maybe we had friends or relatives that procrastinated or avoided getting a checkup because something was bothering them. Hey, bonjour, Anna. And then things went south, right? Things didn't go in the greatest way. Hey, Faye. So that's really important to do that, to address those things and to address them head on. All right, so now I wanted to get into Bernando's approach to daily life. So I went ahead and typed out 9 different things that he incorporated in his life, in different perceptions that he had to keep himself on the up and up. And it may not be exhaustive, but I'm going to try and cover the major points here. Proper nutrition. Again, proper nutrition. So when you look at Bernando's daily menu and regime, which is available on the website, but then I can also put a link here in the comment section afterwards for those of you who aren't aware of that. Proper nutrition. So he ate fresh foods. He ate fresh foods. My fond memories of him are going out to, when he lived in Jackson Heights, he would go out to, I believe it was Broadway, Roosevelt Avenue, Broadway, because back in the day, there used to be all these fresh fruit stands out there. And he would go and he would enjoy shopping and he would examine the fruits. He would smell the melons, he would feel them, right? And he would only bring the sweetest and, you know, the best and the ripest foods back to his home. Actually, he used to tell me, and I was never really sure if he was joking about this or if he really meant it. He probably meant it. But he said, oh yeah, I told the fruit man, if this melon isn't ripe, I'm going to bring him back the rind and I want my money back, right? And he would kind of chuckle about that. But it wouldn't surprise me maybe if he had to do that every, you know, maybe once in a blue moon. But maybe it was a little bit of a joke because, you know, he was very well trained and he knew when fruit was ripe and when things were good and when they were not. You know, he was very skilled in that way because that was his profession. The other thing that he used to do to that end is that, and you've heard me talk about this before, is that he would take an herbal supplement specifically by Dr. Schultz, Dr. Richard Schultz, Herb Doc, Dr. Schultz's superfood. And I remember being with him again when he and Georgette were still living in their apartment over in Jackson Heights in Queens. And I must have spent the night or something. And he was about 94, 95 at the time. And I said, what's that, Grandpa? Because seemed to me he had this concoction, right? He had a very tall cup, seemed like it had some kind of juice in it, but it was a little bit greenish, right? And it had a particular smell to it. Well, it turns out he would make this since 1978, right? I think it was since 1978 or 79. 79, right? Starting when he was 78, that's right. He would make his superfood smoothie by Dr. Richard Schultz every single day without fail. He would have that. So he would say this has everything the body needs. You know, it's soy-free, it's vegan, right? It's organic, it's wild-crafted. He would also put a healthy amount of garlic paste in that, right? And of course he would add banana and blueberries to make it more palatable. And the other thing that he liked to do was to put in Dr. Schultz's Echinacea Plus in that. So just to make sure, you know, that his body was getting all the nutrients that it needed. Our world isn't the same, right? And he was always like that. He used to send my mother on these errands through Paris when she was studying there in the 50s to get royal jelly for him. This is like in the 50s. And she said, oh yeah, I used to go through Paris, you know, because your grandpa wanted this thing, and then I would mail it back to him in the States. So he was always kind of onto something there. The other thing that he had was mental discipline. He had a mental discipline, which, you know, mental discipline can turn into good habits. So he had a routine that he did every day, right? At the same time, he got up at the same time, he went to bed at the same time, he had his breakfast at the same time, he did his exercise at the same time, he came home at the same time, he relaxed at the same time, he soaked his feet at the same time, he went to bed at the same time, he put things back in the place where, you know, he had his keys, they went into a certain place, you know, everything in its place and everything had its place. So this really provided him, you know, with a strong baseline and with a serenity, which of course I'm appreciating this more as I get older. When I was younger and I was more passionate and kind of all over the place, I didn't so much, but this was something that he did that was really a strong foundation. Yes, so Aaron makes a good point. So again, check out the Superfood Plus. I can put a link to that also into this live later. But, you know, it's got your B's, it's got the C's, it's got everything in it, you know, that you need and then some. I'm not going to recite the whole list now. You all are adults and you can look into that. He also had an awareness of his body, mind, and spirit connection. He realized that all these things were related, right? He wasn't really someone to bottle things up inside. He would speak his mind if he needed to. Of course, he had great social skills also. I mean, if there was something serious to talk about, I mean, he would bring it up, but he wouldn't do it in an aggressive way. He wouldn't do it in a, you know, an accuse, you did this, you did that, you know, he wasn't like that. He would really sit back and he would contemplate the situation overall and he would think about it, because he used to say, think twice, speak once. Think twice, speak once. Because if you don't think about your response when you're talking to someone, you're not going to be able to take it back. We all get angry, we all get upset, right? We all feel at some point or another, maybe we've been falsely accused and so on and so forth. And there's a great temptation to just, you know, try and hurt the other person back and say something, you know, as you're trying to defend yourself, right? Without actually maybe really listening to what the person is saying, reading between the lines, considering it, thinking about it, turning it over in your mind, and then formulating a response and talking about it. So I saw him do this many times with people. you know, people would come to him and talk to him and ask him for advice. And he would be very calm, and he would consider what they were saying, and he would give a well-measured response. He would try and consider a few different angles as to what their problem was, maybe that they were trying to grapple with. But the thing about him too is that he was such a good listener. And I think because he was such a good listener, right away from being a good listener, he made people feel understood. He made people feel at ease. He made people feel heard, right? Just that alone was great, because he used to say, if you're always saying, if someone tries to tell you something and you say, I know, I know, I know, I know, how can you learn? How can you learn? And it's certainly not that he didn't know things, right? I mean, when I was witnessing these conversations that he would have with people, of course, to me, he seemed a lot older, right, at the time, because, you know, maybe he was already in his 70s, and then later in his 80s, in his 90s, right, in his hundreds, right? I would just really be struck by the depth of his demeanor, the seriousness, but also the gentleness in which he would deliver a message to someone. So I'm not sure if that's really addressing the body, mind, and spirit connection, but I think it is. I think it is in a way, right? Because all these things are related together. So again, you know, what I talked about having a positive attitude, about taking care of your body as a temple, right? And also taking the time to rejuvenate yourself mentally and spiritually on a daily basis. 4, the other thing was he got adequate sleep. Now that can be different things to different people, depending on also the time of life that we're going through. So of course, you know, a baby, right, a child that is growing, they require a lot of sleep because there's a growth hormone. They're actually growing when they sleep. They may need, you know, 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep. Babies take a lot of naps, for example. But just speaking about us, you know, as adults, right, as active adults, he personally, and I'm not saying that you have to replicate this because everyone is different, but he would be pretty much in bed by like 9 o'clock at night. 9:30 at night, he was in bed. That being said, that's because he would rise at 4 o'clock in the morning. So he would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. He would take his, you know, he would bathe himself, right? Of course, you know what I'm going to say. He put on his extra virgin olive oil on his skin. He got dressed. He would take time to exercise, right? Maybe he would get in his car and drive to the Rockaways and walk on the beach very early in the morning, right? By 6 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and do that and then drive back home, right? Get ready for his day, go to work. Or maybe if the weather was inclement, he would do that exercise indoors. So what I'm trying to say here, just to frame, put a time frame there, is that, so if you go to bed at 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're getting 7 hours of sleep. Now that seemed to work for him. That being said, my grandfather didn't wake up in the middle of the night. He used to say that Georgette, his wife, used to check on him to make sure he was still alive. Because he used to sleep so soundly. His head would hit that pillow and he would be out cold, right? So maybe that's not the case for us these days. We wake up, we're worried, we've got something on our mind. We're waking up at 2 a.m., we're waking up at 3 a.m., maybe we're waking up at multiple times at night, maybe we have a hard time falling asleep at night. That was not Bernando's case at all. He did not have a hard time falling asleep at night. Again, of course, he worked very hard, right? he worked as a chef. You know, when you're working in a kitchen and you're working in that kind of a high pressure a job, right, where you've got to have things out and you got to have things out on time, and everything has to be hot and things have to be right, you know, and it has to get out in the dining hall, and then the next order is coming in, and there's a group of people that you're working with, and the prep time that you have to do before you even go in the kitchen, before the guests even show up, right? That is a job where you're going to be standing on your feet for hours, and you have to have a very high level of concentration on what you're doing. So when my grandfather got home at night, he was ready, you know, to relaxation. That was another thing that he incorporated in his daily life. And I'm convinced that that is definitely one major reason that he lived such a long time. Because he used to say stress is a killer. So you've had a long day at work, you come home, you know, do you want to come home and not take any time for yourself? Take off your socks and shoes. Soak your feet in a foot bath. They're probably throbbing. The Epsom salts that you put in the foot bath are going to relax you. They have that effect. Aside from helping, you know, alleviate any dead skin that you've got on there, right? And then of course he had the olive oil and the water and the Castile soap and all of that, so his feet would be soft. But the point is, whether he was watching a baseball game, or whether he was reading a book, or whether he was soaking his feet, right? He was making a deliberate decision to take that time to take care of himself and relax. Not only relax his body, but he would relax his mind. So when you look in this book, he talks about that. He talks about being in the now. He talks about living in the present moment. He talks about looking at a child playing. The child is not concerned with anything else but exactly what they're doing at that moment. So be like a child, right? To be childlike. Or perhaps to watch a sunset. To enjoy watching a sunset. Doing something that's going to keep you in the moment. He also talks about breathing in here. He talks about the importance of just breathing and the positive effect that it has on your nervous system, right? Because if you're always in like fight or flight, running, you know, and you're breathing shallowly, you don't even realize that you're not breathing, you know, from your stomach like the way a child would do. So I'll tell you one other story in terms of relaxation as being a cornerstone of his daily life. So I used to go over when they lived in Jackson Heights, when everyone was here living in New York, and I'd go over there and hang out because I loved hanging out with my grandparents. I loved visiting them and talking to them. I had a lot more fun talking to them actually than people my own age. So at any rate, I was there with Jet, and we were shooting the breeze and everything. And then she said, oh, you know, your grandpa will be home soon. Great. And I always look forward to seeing him, right? And, you know, he came home and he had a smile and he was happy to see me. And, you know, we had some talk and this and that and everything. And then I remember he went into his den, right? He had his little man cave, right? With all his books. And of course, that's where he'd go and watch the ball game. And that's where he had his exercise machine and all that. So I was like standing there at the doorway and like chatting with him, right? And then Grandpa says, and now I'm going to relax. And he shut the door. He shut the door. Not in a rude way, but he shut the door, right? On me, on his granddaughter. And I mean, I didn't take offense of it, but I just remember being like, oh, you know, it made an impression on me. I was like, wow, relaxation for Bernando is an activity. He has got his boundaries up. Yes, he's happy to see me, his granddaughter. Yes, he's happy to see his wife, of course. But he just had a long day, and he's going to go in there and decompress. The other thing that was really important to Bernando for his health, of course, was water. Drinking pure water. So, unfortunately now, New York City water is very chlorinated. But when I was a child, it didn't have all this chlorine in it like it does now. Chlorine is not particularly good for you. Fortunately, I believe that our water is still fluoride free. Hey, Greg Scott. Yeah, good to see you. So you can use a filter, you know. But this is my point. Back in the day, New York State was actually known to have very clean water. Okay, I'm not talking about maybe a building that had old rusty pipes and all that. That's a pipe issue. Because at that time, we were still using the natural filtration system of the grasses, right? Up from where the water was going through. Nature's got its own set of kidneys, as you were. And drinking water was really important for him. Or drinking green tea. We talk about drinking green tea and drinking a lot of green tea, because green tea is also can be very good for you. I think you guys know that, so I'm not going to go into a whole thing about green tea right now. But this is a pearl of wisdom that he picked up during his travels before it became fashionable. Okay. So, and then of course, I have to mention keeping your liver and your colon clean. Keeping your liver and your colon clean. So, when Bernando was first autographing his books, when he would go and lecture and someone would be kind enough, you know, to buy a book from him and he would sign it and autograph it for him, he would say, keep your colon clean. Now, in this particular book that I have from him, he actually says, keep your colon clean, eat green vegetables and fruit. So, keeping your colon clean, you want to keep it moving, right? You don't want things sticking to your intestinal wall. We know that that can have some ill effects and it can turn into something else. So he used to say that if you are eating 3 times a day, that you should be passing stool 3 times a day. If you're eating 3 times a day, you should be pooping 3 times a day, right? So if you're not, look into that. There's also a bowel cleanse product that Dr. Richard Schultz has. So there's a kit if this is a problem for you. And also there's other, you know, other things that come kind of solo. Different bowel detoxifiers, for example. But that's really important to keep it moving. A lot of people, you know, the excess weight that they think that they have is actually just a tire around their midsection, which really is their colon that's distended from being packed with feces. Yeah, so that's really important. So before you do any kind of a detox thing, you really should clean your bowels first. And then, of course, as time went on, and he just kind of saw the trends, should I say the trends in disease or the trends in lack of health, he realized that it was also important to important to understand to keep their liver clean as well. Live is found in the word liver, and the liver is extremely important for digestion, right? It's also a filtration system. It produces lots of different kinds of biles, right, to help us digest our food. And we want that to be clean, right? We don't want our liver to be diseased. We don't want to end up with cirrhosis of the liver from too much drinking. We don't want to end up with a liver that's very ill from smoking. right? All these different things can have an effect on us. And of course, we also live in a very polluted environment. So to have the opportunity, you know, to keep your liver in optimum health, ultimately, that's going to benefit your body overall. Of course, there are other things as well. You know, your kidneys are very important. All your vital organs are very important. But this is something in particular that he would stress with people, to people, because, you know, I think he just saw people kind of going in the wrong direction. Of course, now since he's crossed over, people are experiencing other things, you know, with their kidneys and so on and so forth. Enough said. All right, so to recap, I would say, or ask the question, what is proper nutrition, right? So eating close to nature as God intended, and eating for optimal health. Not eating because you're an emotional eater, right? Adequate eating, right? Not overeating to the point of not being able to get it from the table. This is something that people do here around Thanksgiving. People will actually stuff themselves to the point where they actually feel sick. You don't want to do that. You can enjoy everything that's there at the table, but perhaps take smaller portions. Little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit. Because ultimately it's the tongue. It's the tongue that wants to be satisfied to try all these different kinds of things, right? So you can have all those different things if you want, but take a little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit. You know, then if there's something maybe you really like, you can go back and you can have another portion of that. But at least this way you're not putting a tremendous strain on your colon and on your digestive system. So he really practiced moderation. He practiced moderation in eating, and he practiced moderation in eating. He never overate. I never saw him be a glutton, ever. It says it's one of the 7 deadly sins. When you think about that, that means literally, right? That if you're overeating all the time, for whatever reasons you're overeating all the time, an emotional, perhaps there's an emotional thing tied to that, whatever it is, you know, that is going to have eventually some very serious consequences on your health. To tell you a story, actually, Georgette, his wife, she actually had an eating disorder. She ate herself to the point where this woman, I don't think Georgette was more than 5'6", 5'5", 5'6". She would eat gallons of ice cream. She would eat like sticks of butter, you know, in her food. She just couldn't seem to get a handle on that. And she ended up ballooning up to the point of being, I don't know, like around 300 or 350 pounds. And eventually it had a very detrimental effect on her intestinal system. Eventually, in her case, she ended up having really bad stomach ulcers. She ended up hemorrhaging, right? She ended up having to have large parts of her colon cut out because they had simply disintegrated. So overeating, you know, over a long period of time can have a detrimental effect on you. So he was very moderate, you know, in his eating and drinking. I would say also, because he ate high quality foods, because he ate foods that were very nutrient dense, right? Getting back to that idea of eating close to nature, eating organic foods, eating food as God intended you to eat, not eating processed foods, foods that don't have anything in them, foods that are empty, eating foods that are fresh, eating foods that are juicy, eating foods that are fragrant, eating foods that are full of color, eating enough green vegetables every day, you'll notice that when you eat foods like that, not only is it a joy to eat, but you also feel sated more quickly. So again, getting back to this idea, thank you, Aaron. So getting back to this idea, of course, all of your major life organs are important. Your brain is important, your heart is important, your kidneys are important, your liver is important, right? Everything is important. But if you practice, as he did, this kind of, moderation, right? And he would say obedience. That's almost hard for people to understand, that term these days. Then you can ensure that everything is working, right, on an even keel. You're not experiencing indigestion, right? You're not lying there at night with all this heavy food on your stomach when you should be resting, when your body should be repairing itself. You're not lying there, trying to digest all these different things, right? Just as an example. And that also, you're able to, defecate in the proper way on a regular basis. This is very important. Now, I'm going to take a break here, and I'm going to look through here, and I just want to greet everyone who is so kind to join this live stream today in celebration of what would have been Bernando's 123rd birthday. And then I will conclude, because it's already a little bit after 6, and I appreciate your time. Your time is valuable. So a shout out to Cloves Club, shout out to Tanvir Rezwan, shout out to Imad Ahmed, Les Roper, Eric Gardner, thank you, Margaret Lyle, Tara Hamacher, Emma Paul, Jacqueline Blanco, Dawn Wellbank, Carol Wood, Gloria Copard, thank you, Tracy Morley, thank you, June Green, thank you, Devon D. Hoskins, thank you for being here, John Hannett, thank you, Dennis O'Brien, thank you, Bernadette Quinn, Patrick Lynch, thank you both, Deborah Stone, Donna Ann McFadden, thank you, Philip Maxwell, Teresa Bowden, John Gary, Rob Riding, Claire Morris, Ravi Banarsi, thank you, Michael Bernice Perchez, thank you for watching, Lorna Moran, Daniel, Danny Boy Johnston, thank you, Paul Leister, Aaron Esteban, thank you, Gail Turner Abbott, Jung Kishore, thank you, Louise Hollinger, nice to have you here today, Louise, Alain Sauvage, thank you, Faye Danko Fitzhugh, thank you so much, you've been here a long time, Faye, Aziz Luz, thank you for watching, Emma Donnelly, there's a name that I can't make out because I think this name, it looks like Sanskrit or Bengali. Sorry that I can't pronounce your name. Paul Thomas, Selaletin Ugurlu, thank you for being here. Rome Sasa, Wendy Lee, Claire McCall, Natalie Mason, Sum Gimoti, John Lynn, Devin Matur, Kelly, thank you, Janet Jones, Christine Drakup, Jackie Whalen Martin, Sito Palispo Duya Lungsad, Marie Isabella Mikolovich, let's see, Yasmin Bikam, Christina Aquino, Steve Pryor, Nazim Persaud, Nancy Uriat Torin, Amir Esmael, Sabor Tajay, thank you for being here. Lolita Areglo, thank you for being here. Virgi Maxale, thank you. Irene Nischik, thank you. Ruth Ring, thank you. Kathy Obaro, Rebecca Sharat,
Sai Matau, Harold Stephen Jones, Muhammad Irfai. Wow, we got quite a group here. This is fabulous. Molly Pascarella, Quarter, Rebecca Jones again, Emma Scott, Dafyud Williams, Dana McCreary, Christine Taylor, Curtis Pitts, Aaron Esteban, Jose M. Verdejo Carrion, Boy Notoy, someone whose name is written in a language that I don't read. I'm very sorry. Greg Jones, someone else. Marlene Evans, Kenny Gray, Seema Amira Persaud, Peter Petra Delors, Stephen Scrumpy Williams, John Vowles, wow, Greg Scott, Fernando J. Casiano Silva, Jeanette Malinder, Linda Latham, Kessner Heath, Bayar Al-Khatib, Gary Martin, Sharon A. Clark, Edge, Lucas Magdalena Novak, Saka, William Lee Coleman, Hawari El Mansouri, Gino Natalicchio, Quentin L. Williams, Anna Corsisna, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Donald H. Mangasakan, Dan Nugin, Gulab Chand, Rita Karaguin Kalimag, Dina Irons, Sonia Suarez, Danielle Nayel Yel, Ru B. Lin, Saladin Watan Yar. Wow, I'm blown away by the amount of people that are here. This is amazing. Salio Koule, Tonya Dixon, Andy Tab, Sandy Cameron Balance, Bindu Gurung, Elda Corrales. Oh, thank you, Sandy. So glad you did this. Thank you. I'm glad I did it too. Jovelita Zafra, Paulina Copiciara, Elena Teneva. Oh, you're welcome, Clove. It's my honor. Wasandi Manjula. Wow. Pat Atonier, Peterside. Camille Novak is watching. Termika Bins. Hassan Ahmed Raif is watching. Muhammad Hamza Raza Quadri is watching. Did I say Emily James? Gloria Madara Durello. Wow. My goodness. I think maybe we even had 123 people for the 123rd anniversary. And Ronnie Ciazan is watching. Thank you so much. So I guess I'm going to conclude here. I will put in different links. I'll put in the links for those of you who don't have it already for the daily menu and regime. I will put in the link for the superfood, right? Also, you can find the liver detox and the kidney detox and all that stuff there. And of course, to the books. Laquita Crowder, thank you for being here. Also, I just want to mention, of course, that there's 2 different books that Bernando wrote. There's this one, the classic Age Less, Live More, Achieving Health and Vitality at 107 years and beyond. Just scratch the surface. I only read you like a page and a half of this. This is really an amazing book. This one's in English. Then there's Beyond 100, How to Live Well Until Your Second Century, that Bernando put out around his 112th year. That's in color. That book is also available in Portuguese. It's called Além dos Centenários. And then this book, Age Less, Live More, is also available in the Spanish language, right? And Vice Se Mas. So Age Less, Live More. So those are all. Hi, Mondelrina. Hi, El Sai. Let me see. Greg, that's very, very nice of you to say. Wow. Yeah. So it's my pleasure and my honor to carry the torch forward I believe that this approach to life and this knowledge and wisdom is more important now more than ever, especially since we don't necessarily have the pristine circumstances that Bernando had, you know, when he was a young boy, right? Yes, he was very big on organic food, as I said, eating close to nature as possible. One of my favorite places to go is the farmer's market. I like to go to the farmer's market. Or maybe you have a CSA, or maybe you have a co-op, right? Or maybe even if you're shopping in a place like Costco, they're much better now about bringing in organic foods because people are demanding that. So just keep on that tip. Again, my name is Erika. I'm 61 years young. I was born April 8th, 1963. I feel very, very fortunate that somehow or another I won the lottery and I got Bernando Lapalo as my grandfather and as my role model, right? So you can see I'm doing pretty well. Don't have any wrinkles really to speak of. I've been using that extra virgin olive oil on my skin for a long time, right? So I'm definitely trying to walk in the footsteps and hopefully be an inspiration for you and for other people to show you that it really is possible to age less and to live more and to add more life to your years and not just years to your life. So with that, I'm going to conclude, and I thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart for being here. The books are still reasonably priced. I really haven't raised the prices in years. As a matter of fact, I think on this book I actually lowered the price. So you can spend like under $20 for that book. It's available on lulu.com. And I will make sure that I post all these links after this thing processes and also post them in the, you know, like event area here on Facebook. Thank you. You enjoy the rest of your evening too. Bye-bye now. Until we meet again, keep your liver and your colon clean.